Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to Season 10 of the Attrition Sim Race Campus Oval Series presented by SM Racing. Tonight, we are here at the Phoenix Raceway for the first time in a couple of seasons here for the series, and the first time here in the brand new late model stock. 100 miles going to be the distance here tonight, the longest race these late model drivers have faced in a long while, and definitely the longest race that they have faced so far this season. That said, already starting to get things rolling down there on the speedway, so how about we take a look at how things will be shaking out this evening. Starting out on the pole of tonight's event, that's going to be the 85 of Mr. Brian Zabelski in the Makoni Setup Shop, number 85, the driver who took home the win at this speedway last time 2 seasons ago. Starting his outside, that's going to be the 45 of Mike Sukup, our current championship leader right now, followed by the 00 Christopher Bryan with his first podium start. Derek Murphy in a brand new paint scheme in that 78, starting back in position number 4. Drop and Bombs Racing driver number 17 of Sean Patrick starting back in position number 5, followed by the 77X of Brady Schreckengost in the Iron City Promotions entry, and the Justin Wilson Memorial number 14 of Nico Morelli. 7 cars going to be making the field. Green flag up in the air here this evening. 100 laps here the distance for these late model stock car drivers, and we are side by side for the race lead going down into turn number 1. But it's going to be Brian Zabelski that has the advantage early on, as there are drivers trying every single which way back here in the back. This is Eric Murphy, Nico Morelli, and Brady Schreckengost all battling it out back here in the back of the field. Murphy's going to fall back 3 positions on that initial restart. And Schreckengost, he's looking to try and make it up 2 spots here as we cross the line for lap number 1 here this evening. The top 3 cars already starting to break away from the pack just a little bit. But Sean Patrick, Brady Schreckengost side by side. They've been side by side pretty much for half a lap now. These 2 drivers really pushing to try and get these positions early, because I think these drivers are going to be coming into here planning for tonight to be a bit of a long haul in terms of the pit stop strategy and in terms of fuel mileage around this speedway. And I don't blame them, because after all, this is going to be a pretty dang long race. But Schreckengost is making some moves down there on the bottom. He's caught up to Christopher Bryan. And shockingly, back at the back of the field there, that 14 of Nico Morelli is going to be the driver who has just set the fastest lap of the race. Admittedly, we are only 3 laps in, but 30.18 seconds for Nico Morelli as Christopher Bryan makes a little bit of contact up there with the front with Mr. Mike Sukup. Single filing it out down the backstretch, but we're going to go ahead and dive back in there. Bryan side by side with Schreckengost, and they make contact and hard into the outside wall, and that looks like that's going to be Christopher Bryan's evening done just like that. Caution flag's not going to fly on the speedway, though. I guess race control's decided Bryan's out of the way, so they're not going to throw the caution flag. That was a pretty crazy incident, though. That's definitely Christopher Bryan's evening over with. But no, they're not throwing the caution flag, so let's take a real quick look back at what happened to Brady there. And looking down at that 00 Christopher Bryan as we cross the front stretch going down into turn number 1, right behind the 45 of Mike Sukup. Brady Schreckengost goes up high to try and make the pass on the high line, and Christopher Bryan drifts up and just not quite able to make it stick there. And back up at the front of these thing, drivers just went around the 00 Christopher Bryan, and he's still out on the speedway, it looks like, in that 00. Trying to bring it down to pit lane, but still no caution flag on the speedway. He's got the late model pointed in the right direction. It is rolling. So I guess decided, you know what? That's good enough. We're not going to throw the yellow. So we're keeping this thing green. 6 laps in the books here now. Brian Zabelski, Nico Morelli moving up 5 positions just under the course of looking at that real replay of what happened to Christopher Bryan there. Brady Schreckengost still on the speedway as well, despite being involved in that incident, but he is losing ground here, so it looks like Schreckengost's engine, it looks like his engine is expired. If he can't get that down to pit lane soon, then we might see a caution flag fly here on the speedway. Sure enough, there's Schreckengost right there. Is race control going to keep it green with Schreckengost down there like that? He's going to take the toe, and it looks like we're still keeping it green here. These drivers are still rocking around the speedway. No caution flags out, no lights up on the speedway. So I guess we're just going to be keeping it green here, which is kind of surprising. That's actually one of the worst looking incidents we've seen so far in the Oval Series for season number 10, but I guess that is just a factor of these longer races with these higher overall speeds. Because after all, these late model stocks, generally speaking, are made to be used at shorter tracks than this. Evidently, these drivers are making it quite obvious that they can be used at these mile-long speedways, but let's actually take a ride on board with the driver who set the fastest lap last time by, Mr. Mike Sukup, get a bit of an onboard view, a bit of an idea of what these drivers are experiencing down here on the raceway. Looks like drivers capping out around 136 going down into turn number 1, which is certainly a lot higher cornering speed than you would expect to see in, say, some of our shorter tracks like Lanier or Nashville Fairgrounds, or even some of the bigger short tracks we've been to like USA. You're not going to see these late model stock drivers carrying 136 miles per hour through the corners, so definitely a bit of a change of pace for what these drivers are used to. And of course, here in the ASRC Oval Series, the way we do things here is either 100 laps or 100 miles, whichever comes first. And of course, here at Phoenix Raceway, coming in at 1 mile or 1.6 kilometers in length, that means we are going to run all 100 laps, but this will be the first time in basically, call it about 8 months, that these drivers have competed in a full 100-mile long race. So if I had to wager a bet here, we're probably going to see at least two pit cycles here. I don't think these drivers will be able to make it on just one tank of gas. And tires going to be a big factor as well, since we are limited to one spare set of tires here in the ASRC Oval Series. So these drivers really have to make these Goodyears last all 100 miles here, and that's not going to be an easy job. Of course, Phoenix, a little bit less demanding on the tires as some of the other NASCAR ovals, but ultimately, it's like I said, these late models are designed to be running at short tracks. Call it about 3/4 of a mile or shorter generally in terms of actual speedway length. So what these drivers are putting these late models through is something that is going to be both a test of driver and machine here. 14 laps in the books, though. We've managed to keep it green so far, despite the fact we have 2 drivers down on pit lane with terminal damage here, and it actually looks like Christopher Bryan may have already packed it back up into the hauler and called it an evening. But around the rest of the field, still some pretty solid battling going on up in our top 3 here. Well, about 0.3 of a second between Morelli and Sabelski, another 0.3 of a second between Sabelski and Sukup. And Nico Morelli is a driver that we have not seen really lead laps in a long while here in that number 14 machine. He's pulled off some podiums before, but he's never pulled off a race win here in the Oval Series, so tonight could be his night. He is setting some really solid speeds down here this evening. But there's always going to be that big what if. You don't necessarily want to be in first place at one of these bigger draft tracks like Phoenix Raceway, because ultimately not having a partner to work with means you're going to be burning your tires off more, you're going to be burning through more fuel. And if Morelli doesn't play things very carefully, he may not have what he needs mechanically to get that car to the end. Of course, though, it depends on how he manages to drive the car. It depends on if we have any cautions come out in these next, call it about 83 laps. There's still a whole lot of what ifs up here around the speedway that we need to get sorted out before we can really definitively call that. But as good as it probably feels to be up there in the lead right now, I would not want to be in Morelli's situation. That said, Sabelski and Sukup both are closing in. And I'm kind of curious to see if these two drivers decide they want to go for the pass here and try and make their way up into the front, get some laps led to their name. Because, of course, there is one thing helping Morelli here, is that there is a bonus point for the most laps led in each race. So even if Morelli uses up all the good right here and doesn't manage to hold on to the first position in the longer run of this race, he could at least pick up some bonus points from what he's doing, and that could help him in the longer run of the season. Of course, 2 races left after this one. Coming into tonight's event, Morelli being scored back with 107 points right now. Our championship leader, Mr. Mike Sukup right now, who is back in 3rd position at 45, getting really racy with Sabelski, has 201, actually just past Tyler McRae in our last race for the championship lead. And it seemed like McRae had things in the bag for a decent while now. 4 wins to his name, but last week's going to be making it 4 wins for Sukup as well. Both drivers competing for the Dropping Bombs Racing team. Unfortunately, McRae not able to make it out this evening, so that will be knocking him even further back in the points potentially. There is 4 drop weeks here in the ASRC Oval Series, but even then, missing races, not necessarily how you want to be using those drops unless you absolutely have to. But speaking of the Dropping Bombs Racing team, a driver that we have not really been able to talk about very much this season, that's going to be Mr. Sean Patrick in that 17 machine. He's caught back up to the rest of the field. He's got his teammate of Mike Sukup just in front of him. And if there's anything we've seen out of this Dropping Bomb Racing team, both in this season and in the past couple of seasons of competition, they don't do team orders. They'll practice together, they'll strategize together, but when it comes to the green flag racing in the main event, there is not any holds barred. They will treat each other like they will any other competitor. So don't expect Sukup or Patrick to be going easy on each other. And speaking of drivers not going easy on each other, Sukup is right there on the bumper of Sabelski. He's really wanting to make this pass happen, and he might just try and do it here down the front stretch. Crossing the line onto lap 23, we've still got a long way left to go this evening to get this stuff sorted out. But that is not going to stop Sukup from riding right up behind that 85, and he really looks raring to try and make a pass here. He just has to wait for the right opportunity to do it. Could potentially even see a little bit of the chrome horn getting broken out here, but only 24 laps in the books, so it might be a little bit early for that, but you never know what these drivers might try to bust out here, and especially this late into the season. Only 2 races to go after this one. Going to be the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, and then finally our championship at USA International. 2 tracks that are going to be very substantial to these drivers, and a little bit of a different challenge every time. Nashville Fairgrounds a little bit over half a mile, then USA International a nice in between of what we have here at Phoenix and what we're going to have at Nashville, coming in at 0.75 miles in length. And USA, that championship race, I think, is bound to be a very exciting one. USA International Speedway has found its way on the ASRC Oval Series schedule every single season since the Oval Series was founded back in late December 2020. And every time it has had a different winner. So 9 different winners at all 9 runnings of the USA International Speedway, and both are actually all 3 of our current championship contenders right now. Mike Sukup, Tyler McRae, Brian Sabelski all have taken home a win at USA. So all those drivers, come week 12, they won't just be racing for the championship. They'll also be racing to try and be the first driver here in the ASRC Oval Series to manage to take home multiple checkered flags from that speedway. Looking around the track though, Brady Schreckengost still down on pit lane, And actually, I say that right as I say that, Schreckengoss makes the decision to pack it up into the hauler. So that is officially Brian and Schreckengoss' evenings over. And that leaves Morelli, Sabelski, Sukup, Patrick, and Derek Murphy. And Murphy, we haven't seen a lot of him so far this evening. It does look like he has lost the draft back in that number 78 machine. He's still very much in this race. He is still on the lead lap. If a caution flag were to come out, he would be right back up in the thick of this thing. But right now, Murphy about 2.5 seconds back from our lead pack right now, and without a little bit of help, I don't think he's going to be able to catch back up to them, just because you really, in these late model stocks, you need the draft in order to make things work around here. This track, it's only a mile in length, but it might as well be Daytona for these short track cars. It is a completely different driving style required here. And right now, things not quite working out for that number 78. Back up at the front, though, these three drivers are still refusing to play nice with each other. They're trying every single little line they can try and figure out here. 30 laps in the books. Going to be 100 laps the distance. Of course, 70 laps left to go for these drivers. I'd imagine that we are going to see these drivers start to pit roughly in the next 10 laps or so. And Morelli's drifting up high out of turn number 4. That's going to allow Sabelski to get down low. Will he go for the pass? Oh, hard impact in the outside wall from Morelli. Morelli's going to lose the lead just like that. Going to lose position number 2 to Mike Sukup. And I'd imagine with that momentum gone, he's going to lose the position to Sean Patrick just like that. Sure enough, just like that, Morelli from race lead and not even in the podium anymore in a single corner. Just one little scrape against the outside wall was all it took to move that 14 back to the back of this lead pack. And that's going to be difficult to make back. That is definitely going to be putting Morelli in a tight situation here, because especially once these pit cycles come through, we might just see some damage that needs to be repaired on the right side of that 14 machine. And if he gets slowed down on pit stops, if we do green flag pit stops, have a green flag pit cycle, if he gets stuck on pit lane for longer than any of these other late model drivers, he's going to have a very difficult time catching back up to the draft and actually getting this thing going again. So we're just going to have to keep an eye on Morelli, see what he manages to make happen on pit lane, because I think that is his best bet to hold on to this battle. And again, another scrape against the outside wall. Now officially about, call it about 1.4 seconds back from our top 3. Right now, Morelli's best bet might be to potentially lift off the gas a little, let Derek Murphy catch up, and see if he can't do some tandem drafting to catch back up to our lead pack. Because right now, where he is back here in this little no man's land island, he's just going to keep sinking back the same way we've seen Derek Murphy do all this race. Back up in the front, though, Sabelski, Sukup, both still battling out just as hard as they have been for all of this previous time. Sean Patrick's in the mix there as well, but he is holding back just a little bit, potentially waiting for an opportunity to strike. You never know with how hard racing Sabelski and Sukup are right now. Patrick really could just be waiting for one of them to potentially wreck. We've seen it happen before. We've seen it happen between teammates before at that. Having the race leader and the driver back in position number 2 make contact, and actually Sabelski is going to be making the call to come on down to pit lane here on lap number 35. So sure enough, it looks like this will definitely be a 2-stop race for these drivers, because I imagine in the next probably 2 or 3 laps we're going to see the whole rest of the field come down. But let's give it a second. Let's see what the call is actually going to be for Sabelski in terms of pit strategy. I'm a little curious if he's even going to bother taking tires at all. And as he comes on down pit lane, I don't see the crew putting the jack under that 85 machine. And sure enough, no, it's going to be just fuel for the driver of the number 85 as he comes back out on the speedway. Nico Morelli going to be the next driver making his way on down pit lane. Let's see if he follows a similar strategy as Sabelski, or if he's actually going to have to wait and get some damage repaired. Because that did look like a decently solid impact with the outside wall for that 14 machine. And again, does not look like we're going to see the jack going up under that 14 machine, so just going to be fuel for that driver. And of course, with Morelli down here on pit lane, the whole rest of the field also coming down. That's the 45 and the 17, both dropping bombs, racing drivers side by side down on pit lane. Sukup in the black and orange car, Patrick in the white 17. What will the call be for these two drivers? Patrick is going to elect to take tires, and it looks like Sukup is also going to be taking tires as well. So a little bit of a different strategy for the two DBR racing teams. And that leaves just Derek Murphy, who also did a fuel-only stop. We're going to have to get up to speed real fast here, because here comes Sabelski, who already pitted a couple laps ago, who has full speed to work with here, trying to catch up to Sukup. Probably about 1.3, 1.4 seconds back from that 45. So Sukup is going to have the advantage, despite having a later pit stop and despite electing to take tires when Sabelski didn't, which I think is going to be a really interesting strategy to see how this tire difference plays out for these drivers. Because, of course, it does seem like all these drivers will have another pit cycle under their belt at some point in this race. And I'd imagine that second cycle is when we're going to see Sabelski and Morelli and Murphy put on those spare set of tires and try and just make the late run happen for them. Try and make the moves with maybe, call it about 20 laps left to go is probably when we're going to see it happen for. But now, really for now, it's just a matter of clicking down the laps, trying to close the distance and be in the right opportunity to make some moves happen. Speaking of drivers making moves though, Morelli currently about 12 seconds out from the whole rest of the field, just at the fastest lap of the race, and not even in the draft in that 14 machine, just set down a 29.82. That's going to be the new fastest lap of the race out of any of these drivers, and he's going to do it again with a 29.69. And mind you, Morelli is one of the drivers that did not elect to take tires when he pitted. So Morelli, last time by, about half a second faster than anyone else on the field in that number 14 machine. He just has to close the gap in these next, call it about 30 to 40 laps. And he could really be in contention to battle for the win in tonight's event. 42 laps left in the books though, plenty of time left to go. And Brian Sabelski is starting to get some pressure from behind. That's Sean Patrick in that 17. Patrick is on new tires. Of course, Sabelski elected to go fuel only, so he's going to have to try and hold off a driver with about about 35 lap newer tires than him. That is not going to be an easy task. Last time by, Patrick was faster than Sabelski by about 0.2 of a second, and as we cross the line, their lap times are actually identical, and oh, nearly a little bit of contact there between the two drivers. Almost could have left hooked Sabelski down into the infield grass. Not quite going to do it though. He is going to manage to back out of it, and he's going to make the pass on Sabelski down the backstretch, and now it's Sabelski's turn to just file on in, try and draft his way back up to the front here, but Patrick is pulling away. I don't think Sabelski is going to be able to do it. If I'm Sabelski right now, I'm really hoping that Sukup and Patrick really burn off those new sets of tires so that I would have an advantage in the later half of this race, especially if we see a late race caution, which seems to be fairly common here in the ASRC Oval Series, particularly in races that have these longer green flag runs. We generally see mistakes happen in about the last 30 laps or so. So Sabelski, while he's not in the position he necessarily wants to be at the end of this thing, right now I'd imagine he's pretty happy where he is, knowing he has potentially a bit of a leg up over the Droppin' Bombs racing team in terms of actual strategy call here. It's just a matter of having all of the details of the plan fall into place. And I'll tell you what, race fans, it's true everywhere in the world, and it's especially true here in motorsports. Even the best laid plans can have oversights, they can have faults, and there's always that little bit of chaos in racing that you simply cannot account for. So right now Sabelski's plan seems good. I am in agreement with what Sabelski's doing here, but I can't guarantee that it's going to be what works out for him. Back up in position number 2 though, that DBR number 17 of Sean Patrick is currently the most improved driver on the speedway right now. Sean Patrick up 3 positions from where he qualified, which is currently the most of any other driver. Nico Morelli up 2 as Morelli started at the tail end of the field, and of course Brian Trek and Schreckengoss both wrecked out. And then Sukup qualified position number 2. He's up 1 position. Sabelski's down a couple. And Derek Murphy back in that 78, who is still stuck in a little bit of a bubble all by himself right now in that number 78. He is still in the position that he qualified, and he is the only driver out here on the speedway that is still in the position he qualified. The only other driver that is in that title, of course, is Mr. Brady Schreckengost in the 77X. But Schreckengost has retired from tonight's event, so that's not going to be changing anytime soon. 49 laps complete as Sukup goes through turns 3 and 4 here for the 50th time here this evening. We will be crossing the line and have halfway in the books here at the Phoenix Raceway. 50 down, 50 to go for these late model stock car drivers, and fairly spread out all throughout the field right about now, but everyone's just trying to play that strategy game, and we may just see a little bit of fuel mileage come into play here, depending on how these drivers frame their remaining pit stop. And as much as I hate to say it, it's entirely possible we could see some of these drivers run out of gas if they don't play their cards right. I said, let's see if we can't take a little bit of a zoomed out view, get a better idea of just how far apart these cars are on the speedway. Mike Sukup a 1.6 second lead over Sean Patrick, and if we pan back here, call it probably about maybe 10 to 12 car lengths between position 1 and 2 right now. And as Patrick comes out of turn number 4, Sabelski going into 4. So some pretty substantial gaps around the speedway for these drivers. No one's in the draft from anyone else right now. Everyone's in a little island all on their own. And really a lot of these drivers, their game plans right now are just tick down laps, try and make some positions on the pit strategy calls, and be there at the end of the race when it counts. Because of course, it doesn't matter where you are right now here on lap number 53. What matters is where you are when you cross the line for lap number 100. And right now, Sukup is doing pretty good up here in the front, setting some pretty fast lap times. Looks like it's the second fastest on the speedway right about now. Sean Patrick was faster last time by, fastest car on the speedway with a 30.24. But Mike Sukup not far behind, a 30.27. Let's see how that changes as they cross the line again. Sukup and Patrick setting identical lap times here. Sabelski a whole second off the pace. Murphy about half a second off pace. And Nico Morelli back here in the 14 car, all the way back in 5th, the last car still in the race. About 0.3 of a second faster than our race leaders right now. Morelli is setting down some absolutely screaming lap times here in that number 14 machine, even if he's not in where he necessarily wants to be on the speedway. And think about it, after that pit cycle, he had almost a 20-second deficit, and now here on lap 56, he's got it down to 11.1 and nearly about to break into the 10-second range in that 14. He obviously is doing something right here. He's just got himself in a bit of an unfortunate track position situation. But I'll tell you what, if the caution came out and this field got bunched back up, I think Nico Morelli would have the speed to potentially vie for the lead of this race. Let's take some laps on board with that number 14 machine, get a view of what he is seeing down here on the speedway as he fairly consistently sets down some of the fastest laps on the speedway right now and actually starts to gain on Derek Murphy and Brian Zabelski here, and he is gaining on the two of them fast. Zabelski's going to pull off down low. It looks like Zabelski might actually be going down to pit lane for his second pit stop. And sure enough, Zabelski's back down on pit lane here on lap number 58. Going to be the first driver to make pit stop number 2. He was the first driver to make pit stop number 1. So Zabelski looks like his game plan might be try and short pit the rest of the field and fuel save to the end. Because his first pit stop was all the way back on lap 38. Actually, no, lap 35, excuse me. And now, of course, we see him putting on those brand new Hoosier tires. So, Zabelski evidently plans for this to be his final stop. Only 2 tires going to be the call for the driver of the number 85 machine, though. And now he's going to find himself stuck a lap down until the rest of these drivers complete their green flag pit stops. And he's got to really hope that a caution flag does not come out now, because if it does, he will be trapped a lap down here. As we recently discovered just a couple of races ago, there's something wrong with iRacing's race control where if you set it for caution laps not to count towards the duration of the race, then it will not give the lucky dog wave around to the drivers that would normally get it. So Zabelski, if this race stays green, he is in a really solid position here. But if it doesn't stay green, he may just find himself being stuck in the 5th position for the entire rest of the race. Morelli is still consistently setting the fastest times on the speedway out of anyone else by a matter of tenths in that 14 machine. Last time by, a 30.01 in that 14 machine. Last time by for Mike Sukup was a 30.15. Let's see how it changes as he crosses the line here. That time he did slow down a little bit as you heard him scrape against the outside wall there, so that's going to mess up his next lap as well in that 14. He's got a lot of speed, but those wall scrapes are not doing him any favors. That is going to make his job that much harder as we get into the closing chapters of this race. Closing in on lap 66, that will mark the 2/3 way of this race. And once we get probably around lap 68, 69, I would imagine the rest of the field is going to go ahead and pit. And then we're going to find Zabelski in a really interesting position because he's going to be on older tires than the rest of the field, and he's going to have to fuel save a lot harder than anyone else. But if he manages to make it happen, he could take home a win here this evening, but it's not going to be easy for him. It's just a sacrifice of track position, or a sacrifice, I guess better to put, of his ability to have speed in the latter half of the race in exchange for track position, and that is a gamble that I'm not quite sure if it's going to pay off or not. Morelli, though, going a little high in the corner that time by. He might be starting to use the good off those tires. Let's see what his time is when he crosses the line, a 30.26. Morelli is slowing down. That's about a little bit over a tenth slower than our race leader. So Sukup now finding himself being the fastest driver on the speedway up here at the front of this one. Derek Murphy. Murphy going to be the next driver coming on down pit lane, though. That's going to be our second driver to make his second pit stop this evening. Let's see what the call is going to be for that 78. If I remember correctly, Murphy did put on tires under his previous stop. So I'm curious to see. Okay, maybe not. I guess Murphy still does have tires to play with because he's got that car jacked up. He's going to be taking 2 new right side tires here. Tires in full fuel, I would imagine, is going to be the call here, and then he should be good for the rest of tonight's event. 33 laps to go. He should be fine, but he is taking longer on this pit stop than I would expect him to, so maybe a little bit of trouble down there on pit lane. 32 seconds in his pit stall. That is the longest pit stop we have seen this evening. So Murphy, he's going to come back out on the speedway, but he is 2 laps down. That might just be the end of tonight's event for that 78. Even after the rest of the green flag pit cycles go through, I don't know if he's going to be able to make 2 laps back. Of course, I could be wrong. I don't want to jinx that 78 machine. We've seen stranger things happen before, but right now, I don't think he's in a very good situation right this moment. That said, 3 more drivers on the speedway we still need to get pit stops out of. Mike Sukup, Sean Patrick, and Nico Morelli all have only made their first stop back on lap 37, 37, and 36 respectively. Of course, we can take a look down at how these pit stops are shaking up so far. Sabelski on a little bit of an earlier strategy than everyone else, especially on the second pit stop. Sure, he was the first driver on the first pit stop, but he was the first driver by only a lap or 2. But here, for stop number 2, he is pit 5 laps sooner. No, actually 7 laps sooner than anyone else on the speedway. So Sabelski really is going to have to fuel save to get to the end of this thing. 70 laps in the books, though. Going to be 30 left to go around this mile-long speedway. 30 miles left to go here at Phoenix Raceway up in Avondale, Arizona. First time these drivers have headed on over to the Western Hemisphere in a little while. Western Hemisphere, excuse me, Western half of the United States. Of course, we do go to Irwindale Speedway from time to time over in California. But it has been a couple of seasons since these drivers have taken to that short track, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's actually a speedway we see on the calendar next season. Of course, right now, we don't have any news on what season number 11 is going to bring. But if I just had to make a guess based on the trends of where we have seen this Oval Series go to before, I feel like Irwindale has a decent chance to make it on there, but we will know after the championship race. Of course, we do take a week off after the champion is decided before we start up the next season, and that's when all of the information will be posted as to what season number 11 is going to pertain. Right now, though, a little bit early to be talking about that because we still have 2 more races left to go after this one, and Nico Morelli going to be the next driver down on pit lane. Morelli going to be coming on down in that black and red Justin Wilson Memorial here. And Morelli, for those amazing lap times he was setting, I really want to see if he has another set of tires here on the speedway. And the answer is going to be yes, but also no. He's out of right sides, but he had a set of left sides, and he said, you know what, screw it, we're going to take the left sides. Between you and me, race fans, past couple of times we've seen drivers take left sides only, it has gone really poorly for them. Don't tell Morelli I said that, but generally speaking, every time we've seen drivers take left sides only, it has ended in disaster for them. And you can see Morelli, He's wiggling big time through 3 and 4. That car is not liking the handling it has been given right now. It is wiggling big time here this evening. Those left side tires being ice cold, the right side's being completely worn down, is a difficult position to be in, and until he gets those left sides up to temp, he is going to be really squirrely all around the speedway. That said, 25 laps left to go here this evening. Mike Sukup, Sean Patrick, the two drivers that have still not come on down to pit lane. Both of these Drop and Bombs racing drivers. Not surprising to see that they are on similar strategies here, but they are not going to be playing it nice with each other when it comes down to the white flag. Sukup going to make his way on down pit lane. Are we going to see Sean Patrick come down as well? No, Patrick is going to elect to stay out. So Patrick will be our new race leader, and he will be picking up a bonus point for having led at least one lap of tonight's event. I would imagine he will be coming down next time by in that 17 machine. But right now, let's see what the strategy call is going to be for Sukup. Will he be putting on those new tires? I don't see the jack going under the 45. We might see Sukup go this whole race without tires. Sure enough, yes, we are. Sukup only taking fuel, and that's going to leave just Sean Patrick. What is the call going to be for that number 17 as he makes his way down on pit lane? Going to be the last driver that needs to pit, so that will cycle out our pit cycle for the final time here this evening as he pulls it on down into his pit box. And Sean Patrick, he's going to be trying the same strategy Morelli did. He's going to be trying to put on two left side tires and see if it gives him anything. Once again, race fans, between you and me, I don't think that's going to quite work out. I don't want to jinx him, but left side tires, generally speaking, is not the play. And imagine as we see him get up to speed here, we're going to see him wiggle through 3 and 4 the same way we saw Morelli did. Sure enough, a little bit sideways on corner entry, a little bit sideways on corner exit. Not as drastic as we saw the handling on Morelli's car. But as things cycle out, that will have Mike Sukup still as our race leader, as he made only a 10-second long pit stop down there. And with a 4-second lead over Sean Patrick, who took those left side tires, I think Sukup is good to go as long as a yellow flag does not come out. Spelski is back on the lead lap now, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to work with. He's going to have to get really lucky here if he wants to catch back up to the rest of the field. When we cross the line, though, going to be 20 laps to go here at Phoenix Raceway. Just 20 more miles of racing before the driver takes home the checkered flag for round number 10 of the season. There we go, 20 laps left to go. Mike Sukup, Sean Patrick, Nico Morelli, Brian Sabelski, all completely spread out around the speedway here. And all these drivers got a long way left to go before we're able to declare a champion. It's all going to come down to how Nashville Fairgrounds and USA International Speedway play out in a couple of weeks. But right now, with Mike Sukup in the lead of this thing and Tyler McRae unable to attend tonight's event, it looks like Sukup is in the makings to be giving himself a nice and comfortable lead in these final 2 events of the season. But of course, still, there's 4 drop weeks here in the ASRC Oval Series. Your 4 worst races get deleted. So yes, it is a 12-race season, but it's a 12-race season to ultimately decide what your best 8 races are. As we get a pass up here back for 3rd, Morelli has fallen back. Tabelski managed to catch up to him. And a little bit like I expected, the left side tire play is not working for Nico Morelli. Last time by a full 2 and 2/10 slower than anyone else on the field. And that trend still holds true this time by as well. As we cross the line, Morelli a full second off the pace in that 14 machine. He is really struggling to get it to turn here. And really wobbly for that 14 going down the backstretch, going down into 3 and 4. Way higher up than we have seen him run all season. He's really, really struggling to get that late model stock to turn. I almost think that wiggling he's doing through the corner is just trying to get the left sides worn in so he can get the car to rotate. But he's already fallen nearly 4 seconds behind Brian Sabelski. He's not going to be able to make that back up, even if he does get the left sides all primed up here in these last 16 laps. I think Morelli's fate is kind of sealed here. This is a really difficult situation for that 14 to be in. And it's really unfortunate to see because he was having an incredibly solid run earlier on in tonight's event. Started all the way back in last place, claimed up to the front, led a solid 20 laps, maybe even 30. And now he's back here as the last car on the lead lap and really struggling to make it work for him here. But up at the front, it's all Sean Patrick and Mike Sukup, and Mike's actually getting close to lapping Morelli. Of course, these drivers setting 30-second lap times, and you can see Morelli 28 seconds back on the relative, about to be 29. He is right there. Riding on board with Morelli here, looking back at our race leader right in the rearview mirror. If the caution's going to come out, Morelli wants it to happen right now so he doesn't get trapped a lap down, but sure enough, Mike Sukup is going to make the pass on Nico Morelli without all too much difficulty, and that might just be the evening for the driver of that number 14. That leaves just Mike Sukup, Sean Patrick, and Brian Sabelski as the last 3 drivers on the lead lap, and Sabelski only has 7 seconds of breathing room to play with himself before he ends up going a lap down too. And mind you as well, Sabelski, he is on that alternate strategy way different from everyone else. And with him having to save fuel, Sabelski might just find himself getting lapped as well in these next 12 laps. It's going to be close because Sabelski is about a second slower than Sukup right now, but with only 12 to go, Sukup's going to need... It's going to be close on if Sukup can lap him or not. 12 laps left to go here at the Phoenix Raceway. And it's all going to come down really between Sukup and Patrick, both of the DBR drivers, unless a caution flag comes out and Sabelski gets to come back around the speedway and bunch back up to them. Things are really not looking good for that 85. And speaking of drivers that do not have good-looking things happening to them, Morelli is back down on pit lane for the 3rd time here this evening with 11 laps left to go. I don't think this is a scheduled pit stop for that 14. He's going to pull it on down pit lane, and he doesn't have any tires left to work with, and I don't think he needs fuel, so he might be calling it an evening here. One way or another, though, that is going to bump him back to 5th and put Mr. Derek Murphy back up in 4th. But Murphy in that 78, he's still stuck in a little bit of no man's land here. He doesn't have anyone on the same lap as him anymore. He's got drivers on the lap above him. He's got drivers on the lap below him. But right now, Murphy is all by himself with 9 laps left to go. But hey, a 4th place finish is pretty solid. And coming into tonight's event, 82 points to his name. He's back in 9th in the championship standings, right behind Brandon Feeney and right behind Nico Morelli. So that pass on Morelli is actually going to help get himself up in the championship standings a little bit. 8 to go left for our race leader, though, Mr. Mike Sukup. 5.5 seconds of breathing room between himself and Sean Patrick. And sure enough, it looks like he will be lapping Brian Sabelski after all. He's got the speed to make it happen last time by 2.5 seconds faster than the 85 of Brian Sabelski. Sabelski is having to fuel save with everything he's got just to get that 85 to cross the line here. Let's take a ride on board with the 85, mostly just because I want to hear what his engine sounds like right now. I gotta say, I am surprised that we're still hearing him going full throttle where he's able to. I was expecting to hear him either clutching the car in, and sure enough, there you can hear it a little bit, clutching the car in down the front stretch. He is trying everything in his power to stretch the fuel to just make it across the line here. Because you gotta remember, he still has to worry about Nico Morelli and Derek Murphy. If he were to pit right now, he could be knocked all the way back to 5th place. So if he wants to hang on to this podium, he has to stay out. He has to stretch the fuel through these final 6 laps. Big high five up in the air there, though, for Mike Sukup. Just 5 more miles to go before Sukup potentially takes home the 5th checkered flag of the season for that Dropping Bombs race in number 45. Just a couple more times around this speedway, and he will have a fairly comfortable points buffer to work with over Tyler McRae heading into next season. Or not next season, heading into next week at the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. Of course, again, rough math off the top of my head here, but we could see Sukup potentially getting that lead that is currently only 6 points over second in the championship. That could be going all the way up to about a 40-point lead if he plays his cards right here. And considering how we're looking around the speedway with these remaining 3 laps left to go, I think Sukup is in a pretty comfortable position to win it here. All he has to do is hold on for, call it about 2.5 more miles, and he will be good to go here at the Phoenix Raceway. But of course, it's like I said, we've seen stranger things happen here. We've seen drivers run out of gas on the last lap. We have seen drivers self-spin on the last lap from the lead of the race. But I really don't think Mike Sukup's going to be jinxing anything here. He is a very talented driver. After all, he does have 4 wins to his name right now, and as he comes out of turn 4 and the white flag goes up in the air, it looks like he is going to be making it 5 checkered flags to his name. And Sabelski has trouble. Sabelski did not have the fuel he needed to make it to the end. He is going to come back down pit lane. Fortunately for him, Nico Morelli is down here as well, so he doesn't have to worry about finishing back in 5th, but he is going to get passed by Derek Murphy. White flag up in the air, though, one more time around the speedway for Mike Sukup. And he will be taking home checkered flag number 5 here for the season at the Phoenix Raceway up here in Avondale, Arizona. Coming out of turn number 4, white flag, checkered flag, excuse me, up in the air. Mike Sukup is a race winner here at Phoenix. Now you really know it, folks. He can wheel and deal around the short tracks, and he knows his way around these effectively super speedways in these late models here as well. Fishing back in position number 2. That's going to be his teammate of Mr. Sean Patrick. That's going to be Derek Murphy, Brian Sabelski, and Nico Morelli, rounding out the top 5 here. But right now, it is all Mr. Mike Sukup. Let's go in just a second. Are we going to see him burn it down a little bit here, waiting for the rest of the field to go on by? And no, sure enough, Sukup's going to pull it on down, grab the checkered flag, and he's already back to his hauler just like that. No celebrations coming out of the driver of the number 45 machine. That said, though, as drivers wind things down around the speedway, make their way back on down to pit lane, unfortunately, we are not able to get any of the drivers up here for interviews here this evening. So how about we take a look back, take a quick look at our race results as they stand here this evening, and get ourselves on ready for next week at the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. Race winner, though, 5th time here this season. That's going to be the 45 of Mr. Mike Sukup, who now has a comfortable lead in the championship standings in front of Tyler McRae. Finishing back in position number 2, that is going to be the number 2 of Sean Patrick, followed by Derek Murphy back in position number 3 in that 78 machine. One of the best finishes Derek Murphy has pulled off here this season, and I think, if I remember correctly, that is actually going to be his either first or second podium. I think his first podium here in that 78 machine. Back in position number 4, that's going to be Mr. 4-time champion Brian Sabelski in the Maconi Setup Shop number 85, followed by the 14 of Nico Morelli, rounding out the top 5. 6th place going to go back to that 77X of Brady Schreckengoss, the Iron City Productions driver. And finally, rounded out the tail end of the field here. Only 4 laps to his name. That's going to be the rookie driver, those 00 of Christopher Bryan. That said, though, that is about all we've got here from the Phoenix Raceway here this evening. Thank you all for coming out, race fans. Unfortunately, not going to be able to get interviews out of any of our drivers here this evening. So for now, thank you all for coming out here tonight. Thank you from everyone at ASRC for supporting the league. And we all hope to see y'all next week at the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. Have a good evening, race fans.